Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 33 of my Industrial Revolution 3 playthrough. In this episode, we are going to produce chromium, platinum, and do some upgrades to the factory, including fully covering the factory with robots. Enjoy. Well, one thing we can handle is diluting the bitumen, although I do kind of want to wait until at least all this concrete is placed. So for now, how about we just get rid of this loader and hold on to it, because we have another setup to build. It seemed like it worked pretty well. Not much really had to be changed, so let's make another one. Also, it'll be nice having the better batteries inside the crawler too. And I see that accumulators got low because the ethanol wasn't available anymore, but we really should be using more of it. But you can see how now the steam engines are clicking on and clicking off, so everything has proper priority now. Interesting, that shut off. That really shouldn't have been the case. It's not like we're short on power. Well, it says it is. I guess we just don't have enough accumulators. I guess that makes sense, because there is a limited output on each accumulator, and right now we've only got a few of them, so they can only put out a few megawatts. But anyway, we'll put a pump here. I'm actually going to use a green wire so it doesn't mix with the other one. And say ethanol has to be greater than 5,000 to send it through, which will give us lots of power output here. And time for another copy. Guess we'll just leave like one space in here. Probably want to have at least 4 times as many of these. So looking at the next recipe, let's just go in line that we unlocked as iron, and that will give us some chromium. So iron, chromium, and then this is based on the chromium ingots. This is based on the iron ingots. These need to be set to iron. So when we come by here and pick up all of this junk, it's going to want to go somewhere. Of course, the concrete scrap definitely wants to go somewhere. And it is a special recipe here, which we want to have priority over these other methods. Probably the easiest way is just to control their input inserters, at least on one side. So let's handle the yellow ones, and then we will need a it's gonna be kind of weird, but a storage tank for liquid concrete. And these will turn on if liquid concrete, how about, is below half, 12,500. Although I put them on the wrong inserters, but the effect will be the same. And then we need a bunch of mixers. As far as speed, it basically looks the same, and that will ask for the concrete scrap, which it will be on the way shortly once we trash our inventory and say we definitely don't want to have any concrete scrap or any of the iron related things. And it is now recovering a lot of that concrete, which will have priority over these ones. Looks like one of those tin mines is out of ore, and it just happened. So we can get rid of that. Okay, looks like this is basically in place and ready to go. We have pretty much completely run out of copper though, which isn't great. It hasn't made it all the way down the line yet, but it's almost there. So we're just not using nickel fast enough. We'll have to see if we can do anything about that. But in goes the iron. Well, one thing we can do is to just force natural gas to run, which will cause it to overload, and then put it all into these generators. It's kind of a temporary solution, but at least we can check to see, is this enough consumption of the nickel to solve the problem? So we'll just flip that switch, and now we are consuming the nickel. And it looks like the chromium is being made, but we'll slap that back in there and all those generators will turn on soon, and they will be able to run at full blast since there's room in the accumulators. But we desperately need to get copper going again. But yeah, making our chromium. Not much of it right now, but it all seems to be working. Well, we can also use a lot of that nickel by turning that natural gas into ethanol, which is certainly another option. So let's calculate it out. We're essentially doing what we already did here. And actually, will it let us calculate based on output? Yeah, seems like it. We basically need the same amount of plants. This is very similar, except it doesn't have a second belt as an output. Something like this, switched over to the ethanol. We just have to find excuses to use up that nickel. This one should be pretty straightforward. Let's take off the overflow valve there. We might need to have a pump for this, but we can try the overflow valve first. And that's going to get fired up on ethanol now. And I'm not sure where the easiest place to send it would be. Probably just straight up here. It's going to go to the other side of the factory, but it'll get to the same tank and have the same logic and get burned away properly. Basically using up every last bit of petroleum for this, but I want to see if this will work, and it actually seems like it is because we have built up copper again. So that might be just quite enough. So I'm guessing we won't need these generators anymore. So I suppose we'll double up. We might need to have logic connected to the status of our copper to turn on and off this processing. But for now, we'll just use this switch to kind of force it on and off when we need to. Now it's time to send the iron ingots in, and we need to unstack them. Okay, time to get rid of the iron setup here. We do still need to handle making steel, but since we made our own setup specifically for steel, I think I'll just leave it in place for now. Because our production rate is so much higher now, we probably can just hook it all together into one setup later. Otherwise, our 3 setups seem pretty good. Robots are working hard, filling in all the concrete. I guess it's time for a new build. But before that, how about let's do some more research? We finished with the geothermal power. That's probably something we'd want to pursue soon. And the next gating material is electroplating, so I would like to cover basically everything else before we get to that point. Making brass would be nice, but we don't really have any extra lead right now. We are using it for making accumulators, so until we've built up a little bit of lead, probably won't be able to do much with that. However, we can do plastics too, which allows you to make plastic bars from ethanol. It does require platinum pellets, but we are about to make platinum with our last material, so that won't be an issue. And you can use nickel plates to make rubber. So between the two of those, you'll be able to make as much rubber and plastic as you want. Natural gas is nice to have, but hydrogen is literally fundamental. So you can take platinum pellets and natural gas and steam and essentially crack it into hydrogen and carbon dioxide. Now, in IR3, you can't burn the hydrogen as a fuel, but nonetheless, it is nice to have. And this is a relatively new part of this mod, but you can make airships. I guess you'd think of them as like little trains, maybe. Not very fast, doesn't have a very high cargo capacity, but it does allow it to go between points. And right now we don't have the full power of logistics networks for our robots, so something like this could fill in the gaps and maybe clean up the factory a little bit. Since it is a hydrogen airship, it requires a great deal of hydrogen, and we would have that by breaking down that natural gas. So sure, we'll grab it, and then from there, we need to make these airship stations so the airships can connect to our network. So we'll hit all of that. Of course, there's lots more to research, and research is taking so long now that we basically kind of just need to research constantly. Because we can't really easily expand our research ability without really going nuts with our minibus here. And there's also one other thing I'd like to do, is it seems like we are kind of filling up a little too rapidly when it comes to our optional resources here. So instead of controlling the crushed ore, which completely stops the production of that secondary resource, based on the status of the primary resource, I think we should do it based on the secondary one. So how about when it gets above 750, this will turn on. So in this case, it would be chromium is above 750, and it looks like it's inverted, so it has to be below 750. So we should just about see it go. Of course, it stops the second I do that. And these belts are very dirty because they have all of the scrap iron in there from all of our concrete we're grinding out. And now the iron is making it in there. It's kind of funny seeing how messy all these belts are, but it works fine. So I would like to change this functionality for all 3 setups. So this needs to be set for lead, and this one needs to be set for nickel. And this is probably the best example of how we are completely overloaded on nickel. And now the copper is starting to run out, so we might have to mess with that in a little bit. And we have more room for one more build. The last one we are waiting on is washing gold to get some platinum. And it's kind of annoying that the train station is all the way out here and we're processing gold here. and then immediately delivering it right there. So if we kept the station here, we'd have a belt going all the way out here and then all the way back down. I mean, we could, but I'm thinking we're just going to need a new station. And it's a lot of extra rail in a completely different direction. But I'm thinking we need to have a train station out here somewhere just to make things a little straighter. But let's see. We're all the way at the mine now. But let's line it up. Yeah, it seems to be in there. We'll let the robots handle all of that. Now that we have these better batteries, we can do quite a bit of construction. While we're waiting, there are some processes we can do, and I just noticed that copper is basically run out here. So definitely these settings do need to change. For now, we'll just temporarily fix this here. We need to make sure this number is above 750 and clear out just enough of it so the crushed copper will make it through. And filled up already. So hopefully that balances out over time. One other thing we kind of need to deal with is making steel, because steel is an alloy. We just need to send the steel ingots in here. So we'll get to that in a bit. However, one thing we need to deal with is processing this bitumen, because we did get the recipe that allows us to dilute it by adding petroleum, and then that gives us a bunch of resources. But is this better for making the graphitic coke from heavy oil compared to bitumen? And we can calculate it. So let's say we wanted to make graphitic coke from bitumen, and let's just say we wanted 10 of them. It would require 5 bitumen. So if we wanted to do the same thing from oil, we'll say we wanted 10 of them. And then that heavy oil comes from the diluted bitumen, and that comes from the regular bitumen. So doing that, it would require 10. So it's only 5 bitumen using it directly, and it's 10 if we dilute it first. However, we do get some light oil in the process, and also we get a little bit of extra petroleum. So we do get more out of it, but you can kind of see how that recipe is way worse. However, that's one tier of productivity modules you can do. So let's just say we max it out. It does make it better. It's less than 10, but it's still more than 5. So diluting the bitumen is more of a avoid it being overloaded recipe than it is an efficiency recipe as far as making the graphitic coke. And since the graphitic coke is actually kind of terrible to burn, that you really don't want to, it makes the bitumen go away, but you get nothing for the bitumen by doing this. Now that we can dilute the bitumen, we don't have to do that anymore. So now, how about we have something going in here to say, oh, we don't need anywhere near that. How about 200? So this logic will still apply to where it prioritizes the bitumen over the heavy oil, but now it's not going to fill this up particularly high. We should be able to hook this up again. Of course, we need an actual unloader. And these numbers are going down because I guess I disconnected one of the pipes. I'll hook that pipe up in a second, assuming the numbers don't completely run out. But we can run back here because we had the graphitic coke continuing down the line right here, and then we had logic to send it on its way. However, we don't need this anymore because we are never going to burn it. We can leave that other logic there, but that's one more set of belts that aren't required. And anytime you can clean up the factory and remove some belts, you probably should, because this was quite the long one. Well, now we need the recipe for handling that bitumen, and looking at all these together, we make about 2 of it a second. So that's what we need to calculate for. And we already have something here. We just need to do it in a slightly different way. Set it based on input, and I think in this situation, if I remember, we had to dump it down here to say 2 per second, which creates this. And then we hook it up. We're just not making that much bitumen, so this doesn't really contribute all that much. But nonetheless, it's somewhere for it to go. I almost wonder if this should be some kind of direct insertion because the numbers are exact. Well, we can see. I'll make it facing to the right because that's how everything else is facing, even though it's technically the wrong direction. And then that takes care of it. And probably that one power pole would do it. So not much to it. Kind of don't want the factory bots helping here. So let's line it up. Yeah, we'll do it with these machines. A couple of spaces. That's so bad. Is there a better way of doing this? Maybe that. It's still kind of bad. Alright, so graphitic coke worked its way down. And now it's being processed as we would expect. I'm guessing it's doing that because we need lots of furnaces. Actually, we don't need to do this zigzaggy thing anymore. And whether or not that actually runs depends on the status of this wire. And we'll say if it's above about 75%, which would be 3,000. If so, this can go. And it'll go in. However, it also creates a problem because there needs to be actually room in these tanks for that to run, and normally they fill up until one of these three is maxed out, which means that this process will not be able to run. So we actually need to have a pump in the crude oil, which would normally be this pipe right here, to turn on and off based on us needing that. So let's push these over, put the pump here, and it's essentially connected to exactly the same thing. It won't work perfectly, but essentially we'll say if bitumen is more than 3,000, this pump will turn off. Or in other words, let's say the enabled condition is the bitumen is less than or equal to 3,000. If it is, it'll run and that will pump crude oil into the system, which will max all these out. And if bitumen gets too high, the crude oil will shut off, and eventually these will clear out their pipes. That will make room in there, and it won't have to fight with these machines. They will just dilute the bitumen. And I kind of want to cut this off so we can actually see it operate normally. So we'll just deal with it later. And the bitumen may never actually max out, but you see right now, the pump is going at full blast. Because I do like to see things run for the first time. And now it's going to actively run to fill everything else up. And we definitely haven't been using any of these petrochem generators, which is fine. I like to leave them connected just to make sure we will survive without them. And if it seems like we are, then we can remove it. So, making progress. Robots are still building stuff. Looks like they're done with concrete though. And I definitely like putting the concrete out here because it's new concrete, so we don't have to wait on the old stuff to get crushed. We can just place more. It's hard to believe we're all the way up here where that mine was, and we previously built a very long train track to get up there. Well, we definitely need to get a train over there. Guess this space up here. And since everything else is based on red, I guess we'll upgrade this to red as well. It's gonna look kind of funny with these rails being separate from each other, but it'll work. This is kind of a haphazard train line here, but it's actually a pretty long rail to come out here, but nothing was probably going to be placed particularly close to these tree farms anyway, so it probably doesn't matter. Let's just do a T-junction here, even though this is just going to be a single rail for now. Of course, we have all of this gold. Yeah. Let's just drive the thing manually. Try to minimize the amount of this that we have to deal with. Well, that's most of it. Actually, one other thing is we'll switch this to unused station, which means this should still have a working path. But I do kind of want to drive it, though, because there are a lot of trees on the way down there. Even though the track is in here, it's nice to actually be able to see it, rather than have it be covered by trees. There we go, it's doing its unload now. Probably don't need anywhere close to this much gold right now, but everything else is set up for this rate, so we'll keep it going. Awesome, that much is done. One other thing we can do is coal liquefaction, where we put crushed coal and heavy oil in, and we get lots of heavy oil and some light oil on the way out. Coal seemed like the best thing ever in the Bronze Era, but that's far behind you now, where basically the only thing we're using coal for is making coke, and we're already making coke as a byproduct of processing our petroleum into natural gas. Now, I think we're only making about 5 coke a second, which really isn't enough for our factory, but theoretically, you could scale this up to the point to where you could make all of your factories coke in this way, and you wouldn't need coal for anything. So you could liquefy the entire output of your coal mines. I don't know if we'll necessarily do that anytime soon, so we'll hit that, and it does give us another option here of gasification, which just allows us to turn coke into hydrogen and carbon dioxide in a similar way that we are doing with natural gas. So it's just another option of doing the same thing if you wanted to. For example, when you process petroleum, you get coke and natural gas, and we are breaking the natural gas down into hydrogen and carbon dioxide. Well, this will give us the option of taking the coke and breaking it down into hydrogen and carbon dioxide. If you wanted to. Might as well. We're starting to run out of things to do here. Having roboports would be nice. And if we check out here, we actually have a little bit of lead, which means we have built all the accumulators we need, and we should have some extras in order to upgrade our roboports. So sure, we'll do that. And since we have nothing else planned, well, increasing the cargo capacity by 1 would be an incredible increase, because that basically doubles the amount of stuff they can carry. So that seems pretty good. Let's keep crushing down this concrete. We are covering the entire factory with refined concrete, no matter how much effort this takes. Primarily just because we have the sulfur available for it, so we might as well. I'd rather not vent the sulfur if we can avoid it. Guess at some point we kind of need to upgrade these mines. Especially the stone one, but whatever. As long as we're not falling behind, it's okay. So in goes the ore to get crushed. Now it's set slightly different, to where so long as gold is under 750, it will allow the better method to run. However, it will shut off after we have simply 25 of the platinum ingots. Seems fine. Hook everything up then. Awesome, awesome. And in they come. Well, now that we are building up some lead, we should probably start using it in order to make our roboports. Also, I suppose we've got to keep the concrete expanding. Don't want to do too much of it at a time. But one big thing we need to do is tear out all this gold. So we have a very long belt to send down here. Well, we're not overloaded on platinum ingots, and we do have maximum gold, so it seems like those settings did work. Now we just gotta hope everything else can smooth out. And it seems like it is, because our 4 primary resources that get processed in this way are copper, tin, iron, and gold, and they're all maxed out. And then our secondary resources are all available, but not maxed out. With the exception of nickel, which is maxed out, we just have them in separate chests. I just realized on my setup here, I did a 1-to-1 ratio instead of a 1-to-2. So, oops, gotta go in there and fix that. There we go. Well, while we're waiting for all those robots to place things, we do kind of need to handle making all of this steel. We should probably plan on the full output of our iron, and if we need more iron, we could add a second one, because technically we're only using a yellow belt. So if we set this to 60, get rid of the crushers, get rid of the furnaces, then we would just need to have 96 alloy furnaces and 5 coke. So that's pretty straightforward. There's a lot that wouldn't need to be in here now. Basically, we can pull this whole thing out. Even though this thing isn't completed, we definitely need to hook it up, because we are running short on steel and things. So we can see it mostly work. Don't know if I should be automating these alloy furnaces. Probably, but oh well. That stone is running really low. Well, it's technically still operating, but I think we need to go up there and fix it. So the steel would come in here. Let's just highlight it to make sure it doesn't split off anywhere, and we definitely want to check that it does here. Anyway, when they get there, they will get unstacked and go to where they need to. Before we get started on the worker cargo size, we might as well keep researching things that are immediately useful. And since we have a lead buildup, we might as well work on brass, which I believe is our second tier deep alloy, where first we have to alloy tin and copper to make bronze, and then we add a little bit of lead to that to make brass. It's not quite brass as you remember it from home, but it's tough, shiny, and very machinable. So close enough. Brass is what you're calling this leaded bronze alloy. Sure. And that gives us the ability to make it from scrap, and we don't get the full complement of brass items, but we can make plates and gears with them. And that does unlock some things here, But this is a tricky thing in the sense to where we don't have any room to put it. So we'll have to figure out how to deal with that, but let's go with this for now. There we go, all done. We should have our 96, and we do. I guess it's time to clear out all these walls, because we have a much bigger set now, defending the entire factory. Let's get all these upgraded the best we can. Kind of want to check to see any more efficiency modules in the factory. A little bit. The gold mine, and the pump jacks. Well, we got some new recipes to follow. We can make plastic from ethanol, and of course we can liquefy coal. So let's grab that platinum. Man, it's going to fill up our inventory with junk. But we're going to switch over to ethanol. And it doesn't use any less petroleum because you convert petroleum to natural gas and ethanol at a 1-to-1 ratio. If you look at our other buildings here, it's 60 petroleum into 60 natural gas. And then it's 100 natural gas into 100 ethanol. So it doesn't increase the yield in that sense. However, it does allow you to go several tiers deep in productivity modules, if that's what you want to do. And it is probably worth it. And a lot of these buildings have 3 sets of modules in there, which they really don't need. I'm actually kind of surprised the robots placed all those in there. Doesn't seem like they should have, but oh well. Doesn't really hurt anything. So luckily, we can basically keep most of these machines in the same place. And that's a lot of petroleum in there. I kind of don't want to just dump it. But what else are we going to do with it? So, boom, 37 pollution. Doing this does require extra steam, but making that is just a question of electricity. We're going to need an unstacker and a pellet maker. This time making the platinum. And is it going to be enough for everyone? Believe it or not, this time, no. We need 2 of them. So there those go, at least. That's the end of our platinum, because we just don't need very much gold right now. But we could probably help that a little bit, because still need to hook it up. There's a lot of random stuff that is waiting on being checked out. Oh, well. Gotta have the stacker in there. Wait, what? I see why it was missing. Well, now that we have the resources for it, let's make some roboports if we can. It might be a rather frustrating thing to make. I almost wonder if we should just request them by hand. At least the accumulators. Because we actually keep the rest of this in our inventory already. So although handcrafting them would be a little annoying, I don't know if I really want to try to automate all that stuff right now. So let's get rid of our robotowers and say we want 50 accumulators instead. And actually at this point, we already don't need any robotowers. Okay, because now we can make a ton of roboports. They are a little slow to make though, so I don't know, maybe I'll regret this. But anyway, they have double the supply area and double the construction area, which is enormously useful. Actually, might be a mistake, but I kind of want to do a deconstruction planner. We really don't need any of this anymore. And say the only thing we're looking for is robotowers. 117 of them. They are instantly going to disappear and the robots are going to be very sad. But because they cover so much more area, it's better just to pull all the old ones out. And now that we have these big ones, we can actually attempt to do it in grid form. Just have power poles connecting everything. They don't necessarily reach the entire range of the roboport, but it doesn't have to. Just as long as it's in range of something that it can connect power to. And they tend to be. So we are getting this entire factory covered by these now. The range is so much better. Looks like we've got to make the wall stronger up here. I mean, it killed them, but took a lot of work. Oh no. I thought these were 3x3s, but they're actually 4x4s, which means they do not fit inside here. That is slightly annoying. Oh, we'll worry about that later. We have a wall to upgrade. Basically, wherever it's taken a lot of damage, it should be upgraded. I'm surprised they were able to get through. But also, it took a while for them all to get shot, so... There we go. Let's see if that's enough for now. I don't think any of the other wall sections are damaged. It doesn't look like it. Probably the most center location would be right in there. Is that going to be enough to get everything? Unfortunately, no. It's also going to need one right there as well. Well, I guess more roboports isn't necessarily a bad thing. The grid's looking pretty good so far. Well, these generators are in the way, so time to get rid of them. I guess I'll just leave the logic here in case we need it for something. Okay, that's pretty good. It doesn't necessarily have to cover every last little area, but certainly all of the places we would regularly walk are now covered with logistic zones. Fantastic. And that's the end of this episode. On the next one, we are going to continue to upgrade our factory with technology such as geothermal power and airships. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.